Okay, and we're live. Yes. Let's go on the Friday. We have a great show. We have a great hour ahead with attorney Stephanie Murphy is going to be joining us. Also, Chad Wolf. Let's go on the Friday. We have a great show. Sound is clear. Great hour ahead. Yep. Yes. Yes. And yes. There we go. Okay. There we go. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yes. Good afternoon, Janet. Thank you. What a week it has been. Pete says we're good to go. We're going to be joined by Attorney Murphy. Some big news of the week. Also, folks, the latest with Nancy Guthrie. That search, no press briefing expected today. Now, again, that could change if there was some huge development with the case. But as of right now, there is no press briefing scheduled. Now, this hour, this is going to be interesting. We're going to start with our legal expert, Attorney Stephanie Murphy, and then we're going to have a chance to speak with Chad Wolf. So, Chad, I'm sure maybe you've been seeing him on television, former acting U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Chairman of Homeland Security, America First Institute. He is really, we've had him on before. He's a tremendous guest, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about exactly where things stand with immigration. So, but with hi there, one and all, folks. Remember, if you're watching on excuse me, if you're watching on YouTube, you can always send um, subscriber type stuff. If you are watching on Facebook, you can always send stars. The temperatures, it's going to be brutal weather this weekend for Super Bowl weekend. But, and I also touch on what happened in Central Falls last night. Another example of, nothing done with a gun or a knife. Well, this time it was a knife. This time it was a knife. So, but the victims are in very serious condition at the hospital. So, and then from what I understand, and this is the type of thing that no one seems to. There's Kristen Perry. Yes, good afternoon, one and all. Folks, remember if you're watching on Facebook, always love people to become a subscriber, help support the program. We'll be ready all weekend long. I mean, if something big broke, especially with the Nancy Guthrie case, I think it's interesting. The TMZ seems to be kind of in the middle of this whole thing. I think that's interesting. So there's Brenda, and I also um, I wanted to mention that people wondering about the coverage of this, and people saying, if that was my mother or your mother, grandmother, no one be following. That's not true. There was a story of this guy from Ohio, and he kidnapped. Do you remember this? A woman from Coventry, and then brought her to Lincoln, Rhode Island, and I think she played dead. He thought he had killed her. He had not, but that was the lead story. And if there was suddenly, if there's a huge difference, and I want to explain this to people, and I tell it, yes, TMZ is like all over this. And I heard they have another announcement coming, but I want you to understand there's a huge difference. And maybe some people can't first of all, I completely reject these people saying this is just a distraction. I don't know what you're talking about. That is anyone I and there's no legitimate claim to that. Those are the conspiracy people. This is just a distraction. That is tinfoil hat. That is, I mean, I think that is ridiculous. People that think that there's someone, that's the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain directing the whole thing. We have some people posting on that. But what I want to explain, and I sometimes explain things so then you can explain them in comments, but there's a huge difference between a missing person. You have runaways, you have custody disputes with parents. Sometimes there are people missing who are a victim of crime, right? We had some pretty high profile ones in our area. whether it's Charlotte Lester or you had Kylie in Rehoboth last year. Before that, you had the one with Michelle. So there are missing people and then they're victims of crime. What makes this different is it's an 84-year-old woman and purportedly kidnapped. And on top of that, kidnapped by a very high profile, well known person. It doesn't matter whether or not you watch the Today Show. That's irrelevant. Savannah Guthrie is a name. So people that are fans of her and follow her, it's relatable. And as I try to explain to people, there are people that are victims of crime. Um, and then you had, you know, um, Michael Jordan's father was killed sleeping in his car. So of course that's going to be a bigger story because more people know of Michael Jordan. Excuse me. A man shot in Pennsylvania. Okay, that's news. President Trump shot in Butler, Pennsylvania. We know that's the difference. It's a difference, and I want you to understand this. It's a matter of what the media gravitates towards. So if no one was following this, I assure you the media would not be doing this story. Now, many times, as many of you that follow and watch and are subscribers and supporters of me, I have the unique ability. I follow just stories that I'm interested in. And that's why we went so in depth with Kylie in Rehoboth. That's why we went so in depth with Erica in Central Falls. That's why we went so in depth with the Charlotte Lester case. I follow stories that I'm very interested in. And then sometimes a lot of people are interested, other times people are not, but I'm always interested. But with this, I'm very vested in the Nancy Guthrie case. No one's distracting me from anything. It's unusual. You don't have people kidnapped. You have people that go missing, but kidnapped, ransom note, and the 84-year-old, that's age, that's different. And the fact that her daughter is basically known around the world. So there's a lot of ingredients with this. I think someone said, posted on the page, all lives matter. Well, this isn't a bumper sticker. That's true. And the way, you want police to treat everything. If someone shows up at the hospital, it's important. But that's not what this is. This is about the coverage that's going into it. So we're going to begin at 106, folks, again on this Friday, Super Bowl weekend, plus a lot of inclement weather, and the news is just nonstop. Now, we do have a story. It's very limited, but trying to gain more information on Charahoe. And there's another story we're going to be posting. Remember, check out depetro.com. It's free. By the way, the website is free. I sometimes see people put a comment saying, I'm not paying the money to read the website. The website is free, for crying out loud. Depetro.com. It's scrolling at the bottom. And on top of that, it has links to all of our social media. It's brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Remember what we say, lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. Now, as of right now, there is no press briefing scheduled regarding the Nancy Guthrie case. As of right now, that could change. Yesterday, and a lot of people may not realize it, there was a lot of information that came out. There was also an arrest connected to the case. So let's bring her on. And I also want to remind people, which I try to, and actually every single week, there are people that they don't necessarily have to be a fan of my program, but they may watch the program and they find themselves or a family member in need of some legal advice. And what do? I always say, call Stephanie Murphy at 401 228 8271. Criminal defense attorneys. Your fight becomes their fight. Attorney Stephanie Murphy. Remember, this is 24/7. And there's all kinds of situations that pop up and someone suddenly is in need of an attorney. Or I see people post a coworker got banged on a DUI and they need someone to represent them. That's who I would call 401 228 8271, attorney Stephanie Murphy. And let's bring her on and talk with her. And she is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, I'd like to start with obviously any thoughts you have on this Nancy Guthrie case. It's obviously very unusual. But just yesterday we heard, there was a ransom note supposedly put out to some media outlets And for whatever reason, this guy in Los Angeles decided to contact the family. He was arrested. He's claiming, "Oh, I have nothing to do with their disappearance. I just wanted to see if they, would respond to me." But what type of legal trouble could this individual in Los Angeles be in?
I mean, he can be in a lot of legal trouble for what he did by contacting and, almost referring himself as having information and, asking for money and stuff like that. So he's facing a variety of different charges. I don't think his explanation is very, clear or concise or really helps him out of this mess and stuff like that. It was completely wrong what he did. And it'll be interesting to see, what charges and if the charges change and stuff like that down the road. It can also lead to an investigation into, other things that he's done, the search of his phone and all of that kind of stuff. So it can unravel a huge investigation, or, he can just get charged with this, but he's in some big trouble.
What do you make of them saying right now they have no suspects, no person of interest?
Well, sometimes I do think the police say that, and they could be working on something. So I know in the Brown shooting, like you were on the forefront of everything. And, and I understand why law enforcement, absolutely they do that, not to make the person run or hide or change or something like that. In this case, it's been going on for so long. And I know the length of time is always a determining factor in the success of finding somebody. So it's a really sad and scary story and a situation. But the police might have something going on that we just don't know about, and it wouldn't be right for them to disclose because it could impede their investigation or the return of her. So you never know with that. So hopefully they have something going on and they have a lead. They're tracking it down, and I know they stop press conferences and stuff like that. So it could be a good sign or it could be a really bad sign. But I think giving the police an opportunity to do their job and do their investigation and follow up on the leads. I just once again, we saw how important with the Brown case of the public leads and the information and everything the public, can do to help this situation. But I'm not really sure what the next step is, especially with the ransom notes and stuff.
Let's just do a hypothetical. Let's say she was kidnapped. They end up finding her and she's alive. And the kidnappers, she was detained, but she's alive. What type of charges could someone, individual or individuals, face of going into her home, removing her, and keeping her captive?
I mean, we had a case, the Elizabeth Smart case, 20
Yes.
years ago that is so similar. Honestly, because of this case, I just watched the Netflix series on that, and he has life in prison without parole. I
Right.
mean, there's sexual assault, there's all these god awful things that happen, and then his accomplice also got time to serve too. So this kind of reminds me, in this would be a great outcome to get the person to get her back alive, doing well and stuff like that. But that this person faces, life in jail without parole, regardless of all the other things that, he could have put her through and stuff like that. So it reminds me of, the hypothetical reminds me of what actually happened in the Elizabeth Smart case.
And just finally, they are saying if in fact she was kidnapped, we don't know that yet, but just drop her at a fire station, a church. But if individuals did that, you tell me, but I'm not clear that this would be no harm, no foul.
I completely agree. I mean, I think the best shot somebody has at that is contacting an attorney saying, hey, I have information on this. Can you go in and talk to the police and kind of try to get me immunity or anything like that? By just doing that, unfortunately, I think the police have an obligation to investigate and stuff like that. I mean, the most important thing is to get her back and get her back safe. Absolutely. But that doesn't necessarily end the police's obligation to, a crime was committed and they have to investigate. So in this situation, similar to much smaller ones, get an attorney, have them contact the police and try to arrange something for you for cooperation. I mean, federal cases all the time have cooperation agreements and have downward departures for cooperating. Not saying that this is that sort of case, but there's definitely something to be said for returning her alive and, as we talked about, and not a worse charge.
Let's talk about some local stories. Apparently, some individuals riding along, some kind of a confrontation on the road. They allegedly point a weapon at the other individual. It then leads to a car stop. I've already heard from one of the friends saying it was only an airsoft gun. What kind of trouble could they be in?
It really doesn't matter the type of gun, if it was a function gun or not, in all honesty, that's a felony assault with a dangerous weapon. And that's a serious crime. That's a major crime. So Just the person who you're pointing the gun at and stuff like that have no idea really what it is in a quick instant like that. So, it could be whatever, the person thought it was and stuff like that. But that's a serious crime. That's a felony assault with a dangerous weapon. And that
Mm.
carries significant, jail time and punishment.
Yeah, I tried to explain to the cousin, and again, this is just through messaging through an app. But you tell me. I was also trying to point out to the cousin that although they may say, "Hey, it wasn't a real gun; it was an airsoft gun. So what's the big deal?" But when that goes out to police, that some people pointed a weapon. Police respond in a certain way when they're under the impression that two individuals have a weapon. In this case, they were told, I believe, a rifle was in the car.
Right, I mean, absolutely. The police are going in with the public safety, their safety at risk, all of that. With a call like that, I mean, they don't know that it was an airsoft. They have no idea. So they're going in with a weapon, a weapon call, saying that there's a weapon involved, and they have to help protect the safety of the public, but also themselves too. So they're going in with a very heightened, sense of
Mm.
urgency to get this matter resolved.
Now, we have a man in Warwick that claims, unbeknownst to him, that someone mailed him 2 kilos of cocaine. And the reason they somehow got tipped off, I think, at the post office, they follow, he takes the mail, puts it in his bag. What about the defense of, hey, I don't know, someone was mailing me a package. I picked up the package. I have no idea if someone's mailing me drugs in the mail.
I think in all honesty, there's more to the story in terms of
Okay.
what investigators and the police know. I think it would be very random if they just got one tip. Typically, drug history, drug selling, drugs being sold through mail and stuff like that. There's a footprint. There's an electronic footprint of what was happening, what were they expecting in the order. Why would you go pick up and sign for something if it wasn't something that you wanted? So I think there's a lot more behind the scenes on this story and electronic, footprint of what was really going on. So I think we have to wait and see what the police have and what the investigation unfolds.
What should someone do if they say, I got a package from FedEx and I opened it, and boy, to my surprise, it was a huge bag of weed, or it was, a bag of cocaine. I had no idea. I have no idea who sent it to me. So, but should someone do in a situation like that?
I think there's only one advice I can give, and that's to call the police and document it and turn it over to the police to do an investigation. If you weren't expecting it, and it's drugs or you don't know what it is, there's also a risk for your safety if you don't know what it is too.
Mm.
So call the police right away. They can investigate. I know you don't really want to, if you were involved at all, to call in a call against yourself. So call an attorney office and say, hey, this is what I found. I have the package. I have it, I just opened it, didn't touch it. Call an attorney, have the attorney call the police and say, hey, this is what happened. But mailing drugs across state lines, I mean, that's a federal charge. So you have to be really, really careful of how you react to that.
I did receive a message from, I think his name was Devin, but his brother, he claims, was an ex-girlfriend trying to set him up, mailed him some drugs. He meant to contact the police to let them know it had been sent to him. What kind of defense could that be if suddenly someone, oh, it must have been someone I broke up with that sent me a bunch of cocaine through, special delivery?
I think it's a much better defense if you call the police right away and tell them that, you just received that. Down the road, it gets a little cloudy in terms of, is this really what's happening? But, if you have text messages from the ex-girlfriend stating, hey, I'm going to get you, or, wait for your mail or something like that. If you have something that the police can kind of back up your story with, that would be very helpful. But my advice is contact an attorney or contact the police right away and save yourself the trouble of trying to explain something down the road of what should have been done right away.
Now, there was a woman in Cranston arrested. They claim multi-state theft ring, $30,000 in merchandise. Someone who was friendly with her basically was trying to say this isn't fair because she didn't steal everything from one store. When you add it up, it's small amounts of merchandise stolen from each store. What about that defense?
I mean, I don't know what's better, having one huge theft in one store that you just did at once, or having multiple times, 10, 20, 30 times where you're stealing a little bit. I guess whatever the facts are and whatever it shows, I would make the argument that if it was one time and one huge purchase, that this is a one-time isolated event and that this person, can be rehabilitated and pay back restitution and be responsible without impacting their life or them losing their job, by going to jail or something like that. Then on the other end, with multiple purchases that add up to a lot, you can argue that there's small amounts that, taken as a whole, it might be a lot. But, this person should have the opportunity to pay back restitution and pay back. So I don't really know what argument would be better, but there are two different arguments depending on what the facts show.
Lindsay sent me an email asking, what if someone stole something, they're fearful they're going to get caught. What if they return the merchandise that was stolen?
So in that, I would say, I don't know if you want to go return the items without contacting an attorney. You can contact an attorney and say, I would say, hi, I have a client, not saying the name, mistakenly or inadvertently or had second thoughts about something that was taken. We want to return it. Can I return it to the store and, kind of make arrangements, without giving the client's name. I think going in, if the item's already flagged and they're looking for you and it comes back as a stolen item, I would go through the attorney or the police to make sure it's done the right way. But in any shoplifting case, being able to return the items that were taken makes a huge difference in how the case ends up. So if you're able to return the item or pay back restitution and make the store whole, that really goes a far way in resolving your case in a very favorable way.
So if someone, just hypothetical, if they stole $3,000 worth of sunglasses, you don't just show up at the store with the bag of them and look for amnesty. You may want to have some communication ahead of time.
I wouldn't do it that way. I guess returning the item is better than not returning it at all. But I would definitely, call our office, let us know what happened. So you want to make things right and see what we can do to help make that right.
Now, Stephanie, this was highly unusual. And the verdict was tossed in this cold case after apparently it's one thing for the jurors to be deliberating with the evidence, but in fact, it sounds like, inadvertently, the Attorney General's office, they left a binder. Somehow the jury had access to the binder. I think they even mentioned it when they were going through deliberations. I don't recall an incident like this in the past.
I don't recall an exact incident like that, but sometimes, it might be similar to the jurors, one of them coming in with outside information that they're not supposed to have. But this case was a lot different. And as a judge stated, it does not happen, ever at all. But in terms of this, the prosecution does prepare a binder that they either give to the judge and the judge has a bench copy or they use during their file. And I think what happened in this case is that binder just got mixed up with all the other exhibits. At the end of every trial, the clerks ask you to go in and verify the exhibits and make sure they're all the exhibits. But if you have your prosecution binder opened, looking to confirm the exhibits, it could be on the table with that. I mean, I have not heard of this happening before, but I could see how that mistake could be made. And one juror brought it to the judge's attention, and the court did the right thing. The only thing they could do is grant the new trial with that information. So
wow,
very unique. And from my point of view, it seems like I could see how it could happen, and I'm very glad it hasn't happened in the past. But I'm really happy that the juror came forward with this information, because it wouldn't have been fair if the jury deliberated on items that were kept out for a reason.
Be amazing if now Billy can get him an acquittal in this.
They can only go forward on the second degree. Charged, was not guilty. So
yeah.
I mean, it's too bad that this, it's an old case, I have to have a new trial and stuff like that. But at the same time, I think from a defense perspective, you have another chance for witnesses that you can impeach, every single time a witness gives a statement. If there's inconsistencies, the defense attorney can go in and say, hey, didn't you say this a week ago? Or didn't you say this, when you were first interviewed by the police? So it could be an opportunity. Bill Dimitri's a great trial attorney. So I'm sure he was so prepared for the first time, and now he'll be even more prepared. I'm sure the state will be more prepared too.
Yeah.
So, or maybe they can work something out. Some charges were not guilty. So maybe they can work something out too. I'm not too familiar to see if that's a possibility, but I know both sides will do a great job, and if they go forward again.
Folks, it's time for Murphy's Law. This is a story that attorney Stephanie Murphy has found. What do you have this week,
I
Stephanie?
think it's just more, with the Super Bowl coming up, with drinking and driving,
Yes.
use Uber. You do not want to be calling our office, Sunday night trying to get advice about whether to take the chemical test or not. So my first advice is don't drive drunk. Use Uber, just have a designated driver, whatever you need to do. But if you do find yourself in the situation, make sure that you're smart. You don't incriminate yourself. You don't give evidence that you don't need to give. Typically they ask you to take a blood test or a chemical test. You know better than anyone how you'll do on that test. So
Yep.
just more call Uber, don't drink and drive, but if you run into a problem, as we talked about before, don't give the police evidence that they can use in court. But at the same time, be cooperative, be respectful. The police are out there doing their job, making sure the roads are safe. So just thought I would remind people of that as we go into a very busy drinking weekend.
And people, the police have already said, Stephanie, they're going to be out in force looking. People need to understand that, looking for people, driving under the influence, driving impaired. So they're going to be out there. So whether
Right.
the Patriots win or lose, you're really rolling the dice if you
Right,
get
it
behind the
doesn't matter,
wheel.
and there's so many implications. It's such a costly charge to
Yep.
get. If you can avoid getting it, absolutely. It's easy to avoid, but if you do find yourself into a spot, just remember what we've talked about and also
Yeah.
remember, you have choices. You can make decisions. You don't have to incriminate yourself.
Right. Folks, she is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, excellent job as always. I'm sure you're going to be getting some phone calls on Sunday night, and we'll talk to you again.
Thanks, John. Have a good day. Bye.
All right, folks, there it is. Attorney Stephanie Murphy right here on the John DePietro Show. Now, we are going to be talking to Chad Wolf coming up a little bit later this hour. This portion of our program is brought to you by Propane Plus. Remember, for heating or cooling, you can depend on Propane Plus. It's the Johnson family serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts. They have a great website. They're available 24/7. Log on at Propane Plus today at 401 885 4209, or in Massachusetts 508 252 3359 for Propane Plus. You can depend on Propane Plus. I want to work in, I think it's very unusual. Another fire, high profile restaurant, Matunic Oyster Bar, had a suspicious fire. Now Castle Hill had a fire last night. Very odd. But nevertheless, let's just say you're the owner of Castle Hill, or this happens to your business, or the temperatures this weekend are going to be freezing, which means the temperatures are going to drop, which means pipes can burst. If you have pipes that burst, call Serve Pro of Providence today, 401 941 5500. 941 5500. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional. Serve Pro of Providence. When disaster strikes, whether it's a flood in your home or business, or maybe you have a fire, if you have a fire, you're going to have, like Castle Hill, you're going to have fire damage. Then you're going to have smoke damage. Then they have to put it out. So then there's water damage. Then with all the water, they can get mold. Serve Pro of Providence, 401 941 5500. If I worked at Castle Hill and you had the fire last night, I would have called Serve Pro of Providence, 401 941 5500. I find it very odd that these two high profile businesses with suspicious fires, both Matunic Oyster Bar and also Castle Hill. That's a story for another day. Now, we are going to talk to Chad Wolf coming up. Now, we are also going to track the Nancy Guthrie story this weekend. I want to point out to people, it is so unusual. It is so odd. I don't think people fully recognize how unusual it is that you have an older person, in this case, 84 years old, excuse me, elderly, Savannah Guthrie's mom, kidnapped. Very, very unusual. It's actually the least occurrence of that happening. Number one, you don't have elderly people kidnapped. Number two, obviously, then her daughter Savannah is so well known. But I see people saying, if that was me missing or that was my mom, there's no way. This is not, we do silver alerts all the time. East Providence is looking for someone. I did when I've dealt with police, there's silver alerts, older individuals they're looking for. Sometimes an older person gets behind the wheel. There was a guy we were looking for in Cranston. He drove all the way to Connecticut. Sometimes you have individuals, older people, that go for a walk. They leave the house, they become disoriented. That does happen. This is different. I mean, they're alleging someone went in there in the night and took her. Now, many times when you hear about a kidnapping, most of the time, my experience has been you do get it where it is sometimes a custody battle, right? A father takes the small child or children and boom, gets off and leaves the state, drives somewhere else. And they're out there. That does happen, or a mother or whoever. But it's highly unusual. Like I said, we did have that situation of some guy from Ohio ended up in Coventry, kidnapped this woman. I think he even carjacked her and brought her to Lincoln. It was very bizarre. But look at, that was such an unusual case. So my point is, I know some people don't understand the nature of this. I'm not sure what to make of this. I know Ashley Banfield has I don't know what to make her about her claims. She's out there. She's a contributor to News Nation. She had a show on News Nation. She came out and said that the sister and the brother-in-law were suspects, but the police have said that that is not the case. I believe Ashley Banfield has doubled down on it. I'm not sure. I want to wait and see, obviously, where that kind of goes out. But I think I think that is I mean, she's way out on the diving board here. Um, let's see. I'm just looking at some Hoda return to the today, saying the circumstances break in the heart. I don't believe there's an update on it. I don't believe there's any type. It's just the same. Again, I recognize people have a lot of questions. People ask, what about this one? What about that? They don't tip their hand on everything. I don't think obviously we'd like it if we could get more information about it, but right now they're not putting anything out. So they I think it could still be. Let me just see this. This is interesting. Jennifer says it appears Anna's. Oh, it's not connected to that. Okay. It's something entirely different. I did see there was someone that I follow who was saying that they believe um, that there was a home healthcare worker that goes into the house. I found Harvey Levin of TMZ. He was on with Sean Hannity last night, and he was saying that in the letter, he thought it was someone local and the way they spoke about the Apple Watch. And I'm not sure what to make of it. I also see, so this Derek Kalella, who was he's the one that it made the ransom demands. So there's a picture of him. I'll probably just post it on the page later, where he looks odd and he has it looks like a red pin out of his left ear. See that? But then I saw that a news outlet reposted the photo and they covered out the red pin. I don't know why you would do that. Now, let me touch on Central Falls last night. And again, we are going to be talking to Chad Wolf. Chad is, we've had him on the program before, unless something popped up, but former acting United States Secretary of Homeland Security. I'm not sure, like many of you, I'm not sure what to make of. It is true that Nancy Guthrie lives near the border, but as one of the people in our chat yesterday pointed out, well, why no proof of I don't know what to make of that. I'm not sure what to make of that other than if these individuals feel that the more you communicate, the more of a chance you could get caught. But I'll admit, I know they're taking the whole ransom thing more seriously, but I don't know what to make of it because I come back to if this was that thought out and someone actually did go in and do this, again, I obviously no one knows at this point unless the police have something, but I would think you would just leave it, the note on in the residence. So when they enter, if you are reading this, she is gone. We have her. You have 24 hours, 48 hours to send the money to this address. You don't send it to the media. You want it like clock is ticking. And as someone pointed out yesterday, if you really are kidnapping a family member to get after, or Savannah Guthrie has money, I mean, she's not a billionaire. There are billionaires out there, by the way, but maybe they felt she was vulnerable, or maybe she felt, for whatever reason, if that is the case, why wouldn't you kidnap the sister? An 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker that has health problems that needs medication? Unless someone could argue, yeah, but she was easier to kidnap, so to speak. I'm not sure what to I'm not sure what I don't know what to make of it. Why no proof? Yes. Again, in this age of AI, is it someone that just floats out a Bitcoin address? You have someone that lives overseas and they are a computer tech expert and they have an offshore account set up for Bitcoin and they have AI devise what a ransom note would look like. I don't know what to make of that. I don't. I'm not sure what to make other than I'm just trying to impress upon you the unusual nature of this case. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Kids Club on the Pike. Call Kids Club on the Pike. Now, Kids Club on the Pike, they're located right off of 295 on the Cranston Johnston line. It is true. It's the perfect venue for a birthday party or any celebration with children. Maybe it's a team celebration. Maybe it's, you coached a basketball team or your child was on a basketball team or a hockey team or some winter event. Now you want to have the end of the year banquet. I used to do these for youth basketball and soccer. Kids Club on the Pike would have been perfect. Birthday party venue, team venue. Also, they offer before and after school care and preschool, half and full day program for preschool children, 3 through 5. Kids Club on the Pike. Now, they also have another location in Warwick, different locations. Call Kristen 401 443 5336 for Kids Club on the Pike. So there was a stabbing in Central Falls last night. It was unrelated to anything going on at the high school, but it was right outside of the Central Falls High School. So you had that. So and there were several people. From what the Central Falls police say, is this was very targeted. Some individuals, I believe, arrive. They had been. Oh, hold on. Okay. They. Let me go to. Okay. Central Falls Police, area Illinois, Rand, stabbing. Individuals involved were known to each other. 5 people injured in the altercation. 3 of them are hospitalized in critical but stable condition. Critical. 19-year-old Nicholas Canty was arrested, charged felony assault, and a 15-year-old was taken into custody, felony assault disorderly. Central Falls Police says no threat to the public. The investigation is still ongoing. So instead, they have this 19-year-old who was arrested. Again, I have this posted on both Facebook and Instagram. But what jumps out at me is you have a 19-year-old that we don't know if if these suspects are going to make it. Excuse me, the victims. What also, as I have been telling you, there is a problem. In my opinion, there's a problem with youth crime. 15-year-old. Now, right now, there are 3 of them, 3 of the victims remain hospitalized in critical but stable condition. It's very possible that this 19-year-old from I want to just check if it let's see, 19-year-old. It doesn't give his address or anything, but so I will find that out from police. But it's very possible that this 19-year-old and the 15-year-old that they could have been facing a triple homicide with the stabbings. They're still not out of the woods with it, by the way. So, in real time, let me ask. Curious. And background on suspect. Okay, let's see if we get an answer on that. I mean, he will be in court and so forth, but I'm not sure what to. That's how serious this is. So why am I mentioning it? I don't hear. There's not enough. Here's my point. There's not enough talk about youth crime. Now, these two individuals, 19 and 15, so they were stabbing them, and 5 people injured, 3 in critical. Okay, it's in the news, but I go back to like there's no public official commenting on the story. No one in elected office. If they had used a gun, you better believe, of course, they'd be talking about it. I notice that a lot of our public officials, and the reason I say that is because I don't consider them leaders. So I don't call them elected leaders. To me, they're just elected public officials. But they I can see where people feel there's a bias and a narrative that they try to get across. Because, like I said, now again, we know about the situation with the Manton Four, right? 4 kids under the age of 13 with their hands, their fists and feet kick and beat to death a 51-year-old man who's walking along on Manton Avenue. And when I say silence, total silence. As a matter of fact, Boston Globe did a story this week saying, that everyone is still shaking about this story, but there's not one quote from an elected official, not from lieutenant governor, none of the city council members, not the mayor, not the individual running for mayor. Not one person is on record talking about that. However, if those kids on Manton Avenue had gone into Del Sesto Middle School and they had a weapon and shot and killed someone, what type of story do you think it would be then? Now, look at these kids at Central Falls last night. This is outside the high school. You have three people are in critical condition. So people are inside Central Falls High School. This happens outside. They used knives. There's a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old arrested, and 3 people, 5 hurt, 3 in critical condition, but stable condition. What if they had gone into the gymnasium with a weapon? Or what if instead of this 19-year-old, what if they had made him, here's the 19-year-old, and they're releasing his identity, not the 15-year-old. Put a red hat on him and send him into the gym with a firearm or outside even with a firearm, and 3 in critical condition. What type of story do you think would be then? Or more importantly, do you think we'd get reaction from some of the elected officials? There definitely would be reaction from the elected officials. But there's silence right now. Silence for whatever reason. They feel they don't need to comment on it. They don't comment on street crime, which I find odd. And I think that shows bias, and I think it shows that they have a narrative. But we've seen that. We've seen that in the past. Now, again, everyone can just say Central Falls, a bunch of juvenile delinquents and blah, blah, blah. But remember, it's costly. It's costly that then, I mean, they have no shot. You're going to be paying the bill for them to live in Cranston for free Folks, this portion of our program, I know it's hard to think about enjoying the outside with what's going to be another very stormy weekend. Let's hope that we don't lose power for the Super Bowl. But Watson Materials, you can call them today. Call Sean at Watson, 401 885 0600. Watson Materials. What do they have? The largest selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island, whether it's landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone, decorative stone. Watson Materials, 401 885 0600. 401 885 0600. They have fantastic social media. It's Watson Materials. If your pipes burst, call JMB Plumbing, 401 743 9153. 401 743 9153. JMB Plumbing. I'll share their Facebook page, but they can repair damaged water pipes. They can repair clogged pipelines. They can replace water heaters. But this weekend, temperature below zero certainly have the chance for frozen pipes, which could then burst and cause problems. J&B Plumbing, 401 743 9153. So all eyes will be on the Super Bowl for this weekend. It is fantastic. I'm very excited for our Patriots, obviously, as I have talked about in the past. It is really quite the experience. I've traveled to 4 Super Bowls, 3 times when the Patriots were in it, 2 times they won, 1 time they lost. It is fantastic, and that will really dominate the news for the weekend. And I think it'll be kind of nice. As far as Sunday at the halftime show, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to flip to watch Kid Rock and the Turning Point, their halftime show instead of Bad Bunny. I don't know. I'd rather see and watch it live, the Super Bowl entertainment, in case something happened. I've never seen Bad Bunny. I mean, it is. Yeah, I don't know. I want to watch to see if he does say something negative about ICE. It's a little unusual. We have to sit through Spanish speaking performance. When he was first introduced as the act, he said, well, then people can learn Spanish so they can enjoy it. I don't know. Maybe I'll just use that as an option. I mean, I'll admit it doesn't have any. I'm not upset about it. We've posted about it because a lot of people are talking about it, but I'm not sure exactly. I'm not thrilled about it or not thrilled about it. I saw when the Rolling Stones performed at the Super Bowl in Detroit. I was there in Houston in 2004 when you had the famous one with Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake. I was actually at that Super Bowl. For us in the arena, you didn't know anything had happened, and the focus was just on the Patriots beating Carolina. And then the next year, I was actually in Jacksonville. So that will be all the attention for this weekend. Folks, joining us right now, and I'll tell you, his perspective obviously is second to none. He is the former U.S. ambassador, he is the former acting U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Chair of Homeland Security in America First Policy. And it is someone who, as you're watching different people weigh in, Chad Wolf is definitely someone that has his hand on the pulse, and everyone certainly pays attention. And we're so fortunate to have him join us again. Chad, welcome back to the John DePietro Show. Very curious to hear some of your thoughts of exactly what is going on right now, the mood in the nation, and how things are evolving in Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here. Good to be back. Look, I think obviously there's been a lot of attention on Minneapolis over the last couple of weeks. There's been a new poll that has come out that continues to say that a supermajority of Americans support removing dangerous criminals from our neighborhoods and our communities. They also support ICE doing its job in the safety of a jail setting. Now, what they don't like, obviously, are the images and some of the ways in which ICE is carrying out their mission. I think that's clear in the polling as well. So let's just think about that. They like the mission. They like the fact that ICE is a law enforcement agency out there doing this mission. They just have some concern about how they're undertaking that, and some of the images, and obviously some of the incidents that have occurred in Minneapolis. So I think you have that. I think the president realized that perhaps even before the polling, which is why he decided to send Tom Homan to Minneapolis to bring down the temperature, to bring down the chaos, to have a different approach to it. And I think Tom's still there, still negotiating with local officials to see if there can be a solution that gets to what the Trump team has always wanted, is the ability for ICE to go into Minneapolis and to remove dangerous criminals from the streets. That's what they want. And if they can get that at the end of the day, that's a win. And the question is, will the local officials allow them to do that in a safe environment, like a jail setting? And will they provide some type of protection if an angry and out of control mob crowd decides to come at ICE? So that's kind of where I'm at.
Chad, what do you make of these illegal roadblocks that some of these anti-ICE protesters are setting up? Checkpoints, checkpoints.
Oh, they're kind of funny. I mean, they are funny to me because I know law enforcement, I know ICE. First of all, I mean, they're illegal, right? I mean, they're in the middle of the street, they're blocking traffic or they're stopping traffic. You can't do that just as a private citizen. So the local police should deal with that pretty quickly. But even if an ICE officer in an ICE vehicle comes through the checkpoint, what are they going to do? They're going to say, "Oh, you can't come through." They'll just get out and arrest them, right? I mean, and so it's almost something that you would see your 13-year-old do, right? Is I'm gonna do this roadblock, and I think that's going to have some type of an effect. It's not going to have anything. The only thing it's going to do, as Tom said, it's just going to piss off other people in your community, because now they're delayed going from point A to point B, or picking up their kids, or whatever it might be. Or it may make you feel, like, I'm pushing back against, the angry federal government, but it has zero effect.
And Chad, if you could also just touch on for people, it's a world of difference when ICE, when they're getting cooperation compared to they're not getting cooperation. And people don't realize that. They want to go to a jail to pick someone up. If they get cooperation, it's a much easier task. If you don't get cooperation, you need a lot more agents, and it seemingly also causes possibility of danger to the public.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, and I'll give you a different stat, maybe from another state. Right now, California, but this can be, equated to Minneapolis as well. So California right now has over 33,000 criminal illegal aliens in their jails throughout the state, right? And so just think about that. If ICE, and they're all deportable, right? Because they're all here illegally. So if ICE says all 33,000 of those individuals should be removed from the country, now I can do that in one of two ways. I can go into that jail setting that's secure. They're locked up. They don't have any contraband with them. They don't have any weapons. It's a very controlled setting of where, and I go in there and I pick them up. Or the state of California can say, I'm going to release all of them. I'm not going to honor an ICE detainer. I'm going to release them all. And ICE, you need to go find them in communities and neighborhoods across the state. And so what would take normally one or two officers to go in a jail setting to pick up one illegal alien criminal now takes 15 officers to go into the streets of Los Angeles or Sacramento or wherever to still pick up that one illegal alien, right? Because you may have an address form, but you don't know who else is inside that house. You don't know if they have weapons inside that house. You don't know any of that. And so you have to send in, kind of a big group of law enforcement to make sure everyone's protected. And that's what they're dealing with. So let them into the jail. And it allows, in Minneapolis, as Tom Homan has said, it allows them to draw down their resources and assets there. They don't need as many officers there if they can do their job, as they do in 98% of other jurisdictions around the country, in a very safe environment, outside of the public eye, and without any chaos. It's only in sanctuary cities like Minneapolis and else that we see this type of chaos, and it's by design, right? I mean, we know the left wants this chaos. They want this because it then allows them to try to put more and more restrictions on ICE, which they are currently advocating for in the Congress.
Chad, final question, just closer to home. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, she's echoing what the mayor of Providence said. Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, is now saying she's not going to allow ICE to use city property to operate or stage. What's your thought on that?
Again, all of these mayors, we see the new mayor of New York saying he's not going to cooperate with ICE anymore. So all these different mayors that want to virtue signal, that want to play politics by saying we're not going to cooperate with ICE, I'm going to put more and more restrictions. It's almost as though they haven't learned anything from Minneapolis. Is if you put restrictions in place and you don't cooperate with ICE, well, then ICE has to do some things that they don't want to do, right? They're still going to operate in Boston. They're still going to do their operations, but now they've got to do it with an overwhelming number of officers. And so if you want a safe environment, if you want, fewer ICE officers in your community, then the answer is not more restrictions on ICE.
Right.
The answer is let's cooperate with ICE, because now I can just move them all to the jail. I don't have to see them. They don't have to be in my neighborhood. They're not going to be doing random stuff. I can just move them all to the jail. They can do that, and then they'll remove them out of the community, and we'll be fine. It's only, again, when these mayors and elected officials want to virtue signal, they want to get out and they want to say, I'm against big bad ICE. What they're actually doing is putting more and more of their residents in jeopardy.
Folks, again, he's Chad Wolf. We certainly appreciate America First. Chad, excellent job as always, and we'll talk to you again.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right, folks, there it is. Chad Wolf right here on the John DePietro Show. Now, I do want to remind you about our friend Marie at It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. You could always pop in and see Marie. And right now, she is diagonally across from Davenport Restaurant. It's Marie at It's My Health, especially anyone that you've been under the weather, you've been sick. We still have quite a bit of winter, obviously, to go, and especially this weekend. It's we're going to catch another. I mean, the weather's going to be really, really brutal cold. But It's My Health. She is so knowledgeable. She can keep you healthy. She can keep your family healthy. She can keep your children healthy. Also, hemp and CBD products for pets and for humans. Maybe you hurt yourself shoveling snow or moving snow and ice. It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. So, folks, on this Friday, boy, Chad Wolf is just terrific. And I'll also say, I see that apparently locally, Governor McKee is saying that he disagrees or he doesn't like what he doesn't like what was what Peter Alviti said on his way out the door, which I'm not sure what to make of that. Simply because Director Alviti is still at DOT and does still report to Governor McKee. So I'm not sure what to make of that. But other news on this Friday, Governor McKee said he disagreed with the tone of the letter written. This is from Channel 12. Outgoing Rhode Island DOT Director Peter Alviti. Alviti warned, if anyone lies or misrepresents facts, they'll hear from me forcefully. So that's what Peter Alviti said. I'm seeing for the first time in a long time. Okay, Governor McKee sat down with Tim White and Ted Nesi on Newsmakers. So the ban is over. He has not done that in a very, very long time, where he has sat down. He feels he can beat Helena Foulkes, and I think that's interesting. He said he was surprised by it. He's always surprised. Do you think it struck the right tone? He was asked. Oh, he did Newsmakers. I'm going to want. No, I don't. I think we make sure we really support what the Department of DOT has done over the past several years. We need to keep a higher level of communication. So I'm going to be anxious to see this. Again, Governor McKee has been boycotting that show. Uh, I don't recall the last time he did it. I'm not sure. Maybe he did it once when he took over for Governor Gina Raimondo, but this is his first time. I don't think Governor McKee has done Newsmakers on Channel 12. I don't think he's done it in close to 4 years because let me think. So maybe longer. Governor McKee took over from Governor Raimondo in March of 21. So that'll be 5 years ago next month. But then that August, September, first, Tony Silva, the chief of staff, he got forced out. Governor McKee blamed Channel 12. And then you had the whole ILO controversy. So I don't think he may have gone on in the spring. So it's actually 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Now he does appear, the governor has appeared on Channel 12 with Kim Kalunian in the afternoon. But this is different, that he has now agreed to give them full access. Maybe he'll sit down with the Boston Globe and he'll also sit down with the Providence Journal. I don't know. I'll be curious to see that over the course of the weekend. Well, folks, I hope everyone has a safe Super Bowl weekend. Go Patriots. I think we can win. So I want to thank Pete for a great week. Again, folks, we'll follow the news with our road patrol and coverage of news over the course of the weekend. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2:00 news. Everyone else, we will monitor and see how the news breaks out. But stay safe over this very cold weekend.